Hi, this is Julie with a quick note about this episode before we begin. For this week's Throwback Thursday, I'm excited to do a podcast exchange with Mother's Quest member and fellow podcaster Casey O'Rourke. Casey is a positive discipline trainer and parent coach and host of the Joyful Courage podcast. When Casey and I talked about sharing some favorite episodes from one another's feeds, I knew just which one I wanted to bring to you. It's a powerful, vulnerable conversation between Casey and her daughter Rowan about Rowan's mental health challenges with anxiety and depression. I remember I first heard this episode when my son Ryan was going through a hard time in high school. Listening to Rowan's courage and self-reflection gave me so much empathy and insight. And listening to Casey's humility and honesty about the challenges of navigating her daughter's challenges invited me to reflect on how I could be more supportive to Ryan during his. In fact, at one point, Ryan and I listened together, and it opened channels of communication in a beautiful way. I hope you get as much as I did from this conversation. And when you're done, that you download Joyful Courage on your favorite podcast app so you can check out all the other amazing episodes that Casey shares. Now, on to the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I?
My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am your host. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and mom to two teenagers. It is my great honor to share with you here on the podcast amazing guests and candid and vulnerable solo shows, really hoping to support you in feeling seen and heard on your journey. Today's show is especially important to me. This is probably my favorite guest that I've had on. I am so excited to share with you my daughter, Rowan, who is coming to talk about her experience with mental health and her school journey. Before we get started, I just want to give a special shout out to her. I wasn't sure how this was going to go, and the conversation that you're about to listen to was just so special and powerful and meaningful for me to record with her. And Rowan, I just love you. I love who you have been a part of growing me into. I'm so grateful to be your mom. And I'm really, 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 really excited to share my daughter, Rowan, with you. My guest today is Rowan O'Rourke. Rowan is my oldest child. She'll be 18 in January and one of my biggest teachers of personal growth. As we all do, we learn who we are as parents through our relationships with our children. Rowan made me a mom, and she continues to influence who I am in the world as I navigate what it means to mother her. Rowan has been through her own journey of personal discovery over the past few years. She's maneuvered mental health challenges, she opted out of high school, completing her GED, and stepped into big responsibility just a few months ago while her dad and I were gone down in Seattle going through his cancer treatment. I am so honored that she is willing to come and share herself and her journey so candidly with you today. Hi, Rowan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Hi. How does it feel to hear me share about you like that?
It's crazy hearing it all in one paragraph. Because I feel like it's happened over like years and years and years. It hasn't been years and years and years, but it felt like years and years. It's crazy to hear that all.
Yeah. The community was super excited when I shared that you'd be talking to me. They have lots of questions, mostly about your experience with anxiety and depression, but also your decision to get your GED. But before we start, I want to point out that Rowan is not the spokesperson for all teenagers. She can speak from her own perspective, but remember that your teen is having their own unique experience. So listen to what lands for you. All right, Rowan, let's start with some questions about anxiety and depression. So many kids, especially teens, are navigating this, even more so since the pandemic started. Yours showed up long before that, though. You were a baby that loved the sling and never ventured too far from mom and dad. Looking back, I can see that being anxious was a part of your wiring. A few mamas want to know, when did you become aware of it, and when did you realize that what you were experiencing was anxiety?
Well, the difference between I was aware of it way before I knew that it was anxiety. It wasn't until like high school that I realized it was anxiety. But way before that, I would notice myself going over and over again in my head at restaurants, my order before the waiter would come to take it, and I would get really nervous, and I would like practice what I was going to say in my head. I would repeat it. I'd repeatedly look at the menu to make sure I knew what I wanted, because the thought of messing up in front of someone or like, I don't know, being embarrassed was mortifying to me. So that's where it first manifested, or where I noticed it. I'm also an observer, and I can tell that, the people around me weren't having trouble with that or weren't thinking about it too much. But in high school, I would be anxious to like get up from my chair and move around the classroom sometimes, because I just have never liked the idea of people paying too much attention to me or looking at me for too long in case I like do something embarrassing or weird or whatever. So I've always just kind of hated like unwanted attention, always. like for example, one time I went to Petco and was getting like some cat litter, and I was doing the wrong thing. I thought I could refill this bucket, but I couldn't, and a worker came up to me, and I was just so, like, I overly apologized so much. Like, I'm sure she was like, oh my God, it's okay. But I was just like, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was so embarrassed, and I was like telling myself in my head, I was like, oh my God, like, why did I do that? But, it wasn't like actually a big deal at all. But in my head, it really was. And like any attention, sometimes when I'm in an anxious mind, any attention feels like bad attention. Even like singing happy birthdays in restaurants, I would literally, always not want that.
Do you remember when you were in elementary school, like, I remember at the start of the school year in elementary school, you would have funny little tics sometimes, like snapping your fingers near your ears, or when you did the one where you'd go and you'd like put your fingers near your mouth and you'd kind of blow on them, and they would just kind of show up in the middle of you telling us a story or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think right now I'm thinking about it, I think it was like me trying to do something that would make it feel like reality, maybe. I don't know. That just came to my head.
But do you remember like the beginning of the school year, new classroom? Would you feel, as a little girl, did you feel like awkward, insecure, nervous in elementary school?
I don't know. I don't remember.
You don't remember. Okay. Another parent asked, what were some things we did, like me and Daddy, that helped you cope with anxiety and depression? And well, let's just stick with anxiety. What were some things that we did that helped you cope with your anxiety? And what did we do that made it worse?
I'm going to start with what made it worse.
Okay.
Well, you didn't really get it in the beginning. And like, you don't have mental health problems. Dad doesn't really have anxiety. He's, an introvert, but you guys didn't really know anxiety. And can I talk about depression too?
Yeah, totally.
And you didn't understand depression either. And so it was hard to cope with it and understand it for myself when the people around me didn't understand it. Like, for example, like you saying, like, just do this thing. Yeah. Just do it. It's not a big deal. Just nobody's looking, nobody cares. Just do it. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't like that in my head. It was a whole other thing.
That wasn't a useful pep talk?
No, it was not. It wasn't even a pep talk to me. But the things that helped were you educating yourself on it. And when we did dialectical behavioral therapy together, mm-hmm. I feel like you learned a lot of things. And so did I. And yeah, you being willing to learn about what was going on with me so that you could come to a place that was helping me mm-hmm. instead of hurting me.
Mm-hmm. Oof. That's a really interesting statement. And like as the parent listening, you know, we often, listeners, you'll hear me say like, let's be helpful, not hurtful. And recognizing that sometimes when I was doing my best to be there for you, Rowan, trying to be helpful, it was actually hurtful. It's a lot to hold. There's a lot, like I'm just noticing even right now, there's like a lot of guilt and stuff that kind of comes to the surface. And I just want to acknowledge that and remember, you know, in my own practice, it's a letting go and a recognizing that I was doing the best I could mm-hmm. with the tools I have. And so carrying on in this conversation, I also want parents to remember, you know, this isn't about, it's never about making you feel bad. It's about awareness and learning and then pivoting to do better when you know better.
Yeah. And also like you knew, once you knew that the tools you had weren't the tools, mm-hmm. you learned new tools, right. which is what you should do.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I still lean on those old tools, usually if I'm overwhelmed, and I try to acknowledge that, right?
Yeah. Or
you'll point it out.
Yeah.
Which is so nice. What about panic attack? What was your experience of panic attacks? How did they show up and how have you learned to navigate them?
Panic attacks for me only showed up in the past like year, really, like full body panic attacks. And it felt like they came out of nowhere. I haven't had a panic attack for a while, which is good. My anxiety really started to manifest and just become, I feel like my panic attacks were made out of anxiety that I just could not hold in anymore. I was just so anxious it had to be let out somehow. They were super bad. They were really bad panic attacks, and I would like throw up every time. I would feel like I was dying and that it would never end. And it was just like the most randomest things that would set me off. Like if I smelled a certain smell and remembered that like last time I smelled that smell, I was nervous, it would trigger my nervous system to kind of be super, super nervous, and I would go into a panic attack. So for a while there, anything could kind of trigger me to be panicked. And for like the past year, whenever I've gotten nervous, you know, nervousness and excitement can feel the same way. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I found my therapist that I really love and rely on, and she told me like you could be feeling excited and like tell yourself that you're feeling excited in those moments. And that helped a lot. Differentiating between the two emotions, because the nervousness felt scary to me, but being excited is a good thing.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question about that? So is it that you learn, so first it's awareness, like, okay, both of these emotions feel the same inside my body. And then that next step of learning how to recognize you're there. And then is it a decision like, oh, well, maybe I'm excited and not nervous and I don't have to be scared about how I feel right now? How does it play out?
Well, yeah. So like, for example, I would be going to my boyfriend's house and my heart would be beating fast. And I would tell myself in my head, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Oh my God. And I would be like on the verge of panicking because I was nervous. Mm-hmm. But with the help of my therapist, I've been able to kind of say, oh my heart's beating fast. I'm so excited to see him. I'm so excited to be there. Like, take some deep breaths. I'm excited. Woohoo. And just kind of calm myself down. But yeah.
Yeah, because when you're feeling the feeling and it's a nervousness and the fear shows up, does it also come with like a storyline? Like in the example you just gave of going to see Jarrett, is it like, I'm nervous, what if he doesn't, like, is it followed by like thoughts of gloom and doom, or is it's just like, I'm just nervous.
Some people, that's what follows it, is the gloom thoughts. Right. But for me, it's like, it was just, I'm not going to be able to stop feeling nervous right now. I'm just going to have a panic attack, and then he's going to have to calm me down or whatever. Yeah, I knew that I couldn't really slow down my panic attacks.
Okay. So it was the sensation that was like, oh gosh, if this sensation's going to take over. And
Yeah.
And how when you think about kids, because there are kids out there and panic attacks are real. And I really want parents to hear this, because I think a lot of times we slide into this idea that our teens are just trying to get attention or manipulate us. And it's just not true, is it?
No, and that's very, I want to say, disrespectful of parents to think that about their kids, because mental health is real and panic attacks are very, very real. Yeah.
So what are some things that parents can do in the moment that would be helpful? And maybe it's like, just don't do anything, like shut your mouth.
Some kids, I know some people who want to be alone during panic attacks. There's some people, and if you don't really know the right things to say, it might be best to leave them alone. But if you know what could calm them down, that would help. Or like, I remember whenever you were around and I was panicky, like you would bring me water or just sit with me or just be there. So I knew that if I died during my panic attack, you would be there, and maybe I wouldn't die for very long or something.
Bring you back to health?
Yeah. Back to health.
Back to life? Back to health? Well, and I wonder too, I think that we had conversations about this, but I wonder about, because I often in my work talk about proactive conversations. So would you suggest like, hey, babe, I know that sometimes you have panic attacks, and I'm wondering what do you want me to do in those moments? Do you think that that's a good thing for parents to do? Yeah,
I do. If you know that your child is having panic attacks, I think that's a good conversation to have with them. Or like, what do you need from me in the moment? What's helpful?
And then do
it. Yeah. Listen. Don't do what you think you should do. Do what they say they want you to do.
Yeah. Oof. That's a good one too, because I think I'm not alone thinking that I know all the answers. Can you talk a little bit about depression? Because you have had some really dark days where I have felt the need to make a really direct connection with you around making sure that you don't want to hurt yourself. What does it feel like when you're in that darkness?
The most darkness, feels like being at the bottom of a lake and knowing how to swim but not wanting to swim out, like not having the energy or being so weighed down. It's just better to stay there. Not knowing where to go and just kind of being there. And there was times when I wanted to just run away from it, like run away from home, as if it would like solve my problems, because I thought that it would solve my problems moving from Monroe to Bellingham, but obviously it didn't. Mental health follows you where you go. And then I know a lot of people think that moving away from somewhere will change your stuff, but it goes with you. And depression was like an outline of myself that like was a version of me but not me, and was making me feel weighed down and like sunken into myself. I don't know. Yeah.
What did it feel like on those days when I did when I was explicit and would ask you, like, are you...
I could see the fear in your eyes when you asked me that. And I mean, I've never thought about hurting myself, so it was always super easy and quick to say, reassure you and know that you needed to be reassured.
Yeah, and I just want to share with all of you, like, my experience of that. You know, if anyone, all the people that are listening who know that their kids are struggling with, you know, some type of depression, and how scary that is. And it feels like we can protect our kids, you know, when they're little, and we can keep them out of the street, and we can make them wear a coat and keep them. You
can't protect them from their own mind.
I know. Yeah. And so it's very hopeless, and it's a feeling of just like hopelessness and, you know, useless. I just felt so useless. So I always appreciated Rowan in those moments. Like, I felt like our souls were speaking to each other. Like, I'd look at you and I'd be like, do you want to hurt yourself? And then the way that you were able to respond to me in those moments, more than I don't even know what you would say, but the energy that you would say it with was like, I'm good, Mom. I'm just not doing so good right now.
Yeah.
You know, and that was heavy, but reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, so like we were talking about with anxiety, what were the things when we're talking about depression, what are some things that were helpful for you? Because, you know, it's been a while since you've been super dark.
Yeah.
And what has been helpful? What's helped you?
Well, depression is hard. I know for parents too, because while you're in it, there's nothing really that your parent or that you can say to your kids to make it better. It's not like a wound that you can heal. It's deeper than that. The things that were helpful was finding a good therapist that understood me and that I got along with and that, you know, I felt comfortable with. And doing DBT therapy definitely helped. I don't get nearly as anxious as I ever have gotten, which is crazy. And I think that's because of therapy and DBT. And I feel like you know just as much as I do, so you're there for me too. And the things also, like, we learned a lot of skills in DBT, and one of those was accumulating positives, which is just, like, having things that you can do to make yourself feel good in your pocket that you can turn to when you're sad, like, really, really sad, and know that it'll comfort you and make you feel nice.
And is that also, like, those are kind of in the moment, like, I'm having a hard time, so I'm going to accumulate some positives. Is it also, you know, just like having a routine of accumulating positives even when things are going okay? Is that
I think it's harder to accumulate positives when you're not okay.
Right.
So when you are, doing stuff.
To maintain that balance.
Yeah.
And just everybody who's listening, so Rowan is referencing DBT, and if you're in the Joyful Courage for Parents of Teens group, you've seen me talk about DBT a lot. Dialectic behavioral therapy, when done with fidelity, is a process where groups of teens and their caregivers meet weekly in kind of a workshop setting and learn tools and skills and do a lot of sharing. And then the teenagers also have a DBT therapist that they work with once a week. So it's pretty involved.
Therapy twice a week for like 7 months.
6 months.
6 months.
Which, by the way, when I told Rowan, hey, we're going to do this thing for 6 months, I was really nervous that she was going to say, oh, hell no.
And I was kind of like, wow, okay.
But it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did the group setting, I'm going off script right now, how did the group setting feel for you?
It was good. It it was like a journey that we were all taking together. And I saw the way the people in the group changed too. And at the end, like, we all said little things about each other, and everybody saw, like, everybody's growth, which was really cool because you can't always see your own growth, but hearing someone tell you, like, that you're a different person than you were is kind of crazy. Yeah.
Do you feel, so sometimes adults will say that teenagers think that they're the only ones going through what they're going through. Did you feel, before DBT, did you feel like no one else is going through what I'm going through? Did you feel that? I
think adults say that a lot, but teenagers say that because it feels lonely. And I knew that I wasn't the only one going through what I was going through, but it is lonely.
Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, lots of feelings coming up for me as I hear that. The last 6 or 7 months, I've seen you really step in and play an active role in your mental well-being. So we did that group DBT program, and you found Annie, the greatest therapist on earth. By the way, everyone, Annie was not Rowan's first therapist. There were a whole handful of gals that three, okay, not a huge handful, but three that she would go begrudgingly to talk to and didn't connect. And so we love Annie. What was it that shifted you into recognizing that you were really the only one that could help change your experience?
I always knew it was up to me, but for a while, I just kind of threw that away and was like, screw it, I'm just going to feel this for a while, because it felt too heavy on my shoulders, that it was all up to me, and all I could do for a while was go through the motions. Even at the beginning of DBT, like, I wasn't doing the homework like I was at the end. I was just going through the motions. I was showing up and being there. But as therapy healed me, I became more of an active participant in helping myself. Like, as therapy took some of the load off of my shoulders, I could kind of do more for myself.
Recognizing that it's your work to do, but is there a space too for knowing that you have rock solid support? Does that help take the load off too?
No. Really? It didn't for me, because, like, to me, I thought, like, oh, I knew, like, people were there for me, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it's internal, so it's not really something that can be cured with support.
Right.
Yeah. It's nice, though.
Okay.
Don't worry, it's
like,
lovely.
Oh,
No, yeah. It makes you feel less alone, but it's like...
It's still your work to do. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the interruption. I want to make sure that you know that this month, the month of December, I am running a new program, and I'm looking for an army of beta users. Beta users mean that you are someone who is going to go through the program and provide feedback to me about how you are experiencing the content and the delivery. In exchange for your feedback, you will get to go through this program at a deeply discounted price. The name of the program is Parenting for the Season You're In. I wanted to design something that would be useful for parents with school-age kids all the way through the teen years, in doing both an exploration of self as well as learning some tried and true positive discipline tools for creating the dynamic that you want in your home. If you are interested in being a part of the beta group to go through this program and offer tons of feedback, you can check it out at joyfulcourage.com/seasons. joyfulcourage.com/seasons. There's more information there on that page and a button to register for the program. Check it out. You'll be glad that you did. Now back to the podcast. As you look back on the last few years in your mental health journey, what are you grateful for? And what have you learned about yourself?
I'm grateful that I survived it. Not that I thought I wasn't going to, but that I'm through it. Because I didn't know if it would end. Well, it hasn't really ended, but like subdued. Is that the right word?
Subtle.
I don't think that's the right word.
Maybe it's subdued.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's quieted down.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm really grateful for that. And I've learned that the mental health journey is not linear. And I'm grateful that you took the time to hear me and see me where I was and finded me the help that I needed. Even if I didn't want it, I'm very grateful for that. Because some kids don't have that from their parents, and I think they should. And I've learned that nothing lasts forever, even when it feels so absolute that it will. Things change, and you change over time. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even you parents that are listening, and if things are really hard with your kids, that is a powerful statement from Rowan right there. Like, things change. Things are temporary. Nothing stays the same. So,
but you have to put the work in for things to change. Yes. Like, you can't just sit there and things will change for you.
Right. Right. But remembering that, what is alive today will be different in 3 months or 6 months or 7 months, especially when you're doing the work of helping yourself and and staying the course for your kids, because there were definitely times where I just wanted to.
What did you do?
I would have this vision of like some old movies when people would get kind of hysterical or crazy. The characters would like smack, 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 would like slap them across the face and hold their shoulders and say, "Get a hold of yourself." And I totally had visions of like, oh my God, I just want to slap her and be like, "Get it together," which of course wouldn't have been useful. Nor was it
probably would have just added to the weight on my shoulders.
Perhaps would have made it worse. Yeah, and not to say, everyone listening, that I was. There were plenty of times where it did get the better of me, and my fear and my lack of feeling of control or that I could protect Rowan did not. I did not show up well.
But there was also times where you showed up really well.
Thanks, Ro.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you for that. But I just, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and, cleaning it up when you make a mistake and make it right and reconnect and stay in relationship. Do you feel like time and maturity has played a role at all?
I don't know. I think it has to do more with me being ready to heal myself. But so time, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we're 5 years out, 10 years out, and
20.
Looking back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, school. Now, you had all of these mental health issues come up parallel to moving into high school, which is a crazy enough experience on its own for teens, let alone teens who are also struggling with severe. Because I would say you had, anxiety is a severe, severe level of anxiety and depression. You did your freshman year in person, right, at the local high school. You'd go to school every day. Freshman year was probably the most challenging year for our relationship, I would say. I remember you not really wanting, from like the first day.
I changed.
Not wanting to have anything to do with us. And I, of course, took it personally. It triggered all sorts of my own stuff. And often I would then come from a place, like I mentioned a minute ago, of hurt and desperation. You were also engaging in some risky behavior. Can you talk a little bit about navigating high school that year and just the choices that you were making?
Yeah, high school sucked. I was less of myself that year than I've ever been. Like, immediately going into high school, I felt like I had to be somebody at school, like somebody that it wasn't necessarily natural of me to be. I would wake up every morning and put on a whole face of makeup and straighten my hair pin straight and spend so long picking out an outfit that I would like make myself late even after waking up at 5 a.m. Yeah, it was exhausting.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
It was brutal. And it was hard to, like, as an outsider looking in, like, I would, want to say, like, hey, you're good. And that would just piss you off.
Yeah. Yeah, because I felt like that's who I didn't know who I was, but I felt like that was who I should be.
Or was supposed to be?
Yeah. Or was, okay. I mean, not everybody, but most of the girls in high school looked the same. They all made their faces up in the morning and, did all this stuff, and I just like subconsciously did it. I didn't know who I was at all, and I felt like I felt like you didn't either, since I didn't. So I got angry at you when you would say that, because I was like, you don't know me. I don't know me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what you would say. It would just be, just get out, get away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because you're right. Like, we were like, what happened to Rowan? Where did Rowan go? Because
I was lost.
Yeah. Oh, babe. And you were, are we going to talk about the risky behaviors?
Sure.
So vaping showed up freshman year. One way that we did connect was you hated the school bus, and I realized that if no other time in the day, that 10-minute drive to school was a time where I could catch you in a little bit of lightness most of the time and feel connected, and we'd stop and get a coffee drink for you, not realizing that I was actually contributing to
addiction.
A pretty severe caffeine addiction. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing at school?
I was drinking caffeine and vaping in the bathroom, people.
Yeah.
And I was not doing homework. And I had a really smart friend that I had 5 out of 6 periods with that would give me the answers, and I would just glide through the day and be mad at everybody.
And that was coping.
Yeah.
That was coping. Whew. 10th grade, you opted into online school. I remember you coming home from 9th grade and just saying, I am not going back to that place. And I really was like, well, what about this other high school? Like, you could go to a different high school. Maybe it's the high school. And you were...
It was high school.
Just high school.
Yeah. And also the friend that I talked about, she was opting into online school, and she kind of, even though I wasn't in check, she kept me as much in check as I could be. And I couldn't picture myself going back to school, even going to school without her there to keep me sane or something.
Having that friend.
Yeah.
You wanted out, and I remember that summer feeling so torn and just kind of holding it as a possibility, but also holding the possibility that you'd be like, you know what, Mom, I'm good. I can go back to school. And all summer long, you were like, did you sign me up yet? When are you going to sign me up yet? And then finally, pretty late in August, we did it. And I was, people have asked, what was that like for you? And it was kind of the same as when you completely opted out. It was, my internal conversations were, am I enabling her anxiety? Am I doing her a disservice of taking her out of this environment? Am I, it was really just a spin out in my mind. What is the right thing to do? What is the best thing to do for my child? And really not having any answers. And I've told you this before, but your confidence in no, this is what I want to do. Here's the website, sign me up. Your resolve was, I just said, okay, you know what? Let's do it. We're doing it. And what did you, and then that year, 10th grade, there was a reset for you.
Yeah.
It did feel like some of this external angst and feeling of being lost was kind of cracked open, and it was like our girl was back. We got glimpses of our girl being back. What was your experience of that year?
Well, the online school that I didn't, people didn't have to show their faces, so I didn't feel like I needed to get all dressed up every day, so I didn't, and it became like I would not get made up, and that somehow, in that, I found less pressure, less stress, and I started to do try new things that I had some sort of interest in, just trying to figure out who I was. I tried guitar, I tried piano, I tried all sorts of stuff. I was a person outside of high school, and I felt like I couldn't be a person in high school. I felt like I just had to be a girl everybody else was.
Did you, and that year too, just to catch everybody up, is the year that we decided to move. So there was some hopefulness too, right? I get to get out of here. I know I was excited. And then there was planning for ahead, not, you coming to
Whatcom Community College to do Running Start.
Yeah, which Running Start, for anyone who doesn't live in the state of Washington, is basically finishing high school at the community college while also earning your AA. And Rowan was really excited about that. And 3 weeks in, everything came crashing down. Will you talk a little bit about that? Because we moved up here, and I could, there was, it was really tough as far as how to meet the people. And
yeah, I'm not a meet the people person. My brother is. I'm not. And before I started school started at the end of September. And before I started, I had gotten a job as a trainee hostess in a local restaurant. And it just, my anxiety was the worst it's ever been. My anxiety, thrived there. It was, really bad. So I was going to school while also feeling super stressed about, I would think about, in 2 days and 4 hours I have to go to work, and I don't want, and I would do nothing for 2 hours before I go to work so I could prepare myself. But being in school was fine. I was anxious in between classes and going...
in the unstructured time?
Yeah, and I was anxious going to classes and walking around in front of people. I made a friend. I'm sociable when I force myself to be, and I can force myself to talk to people, but it was all just building up inside me, and it was too much to handle. It was job stress and living somewhere new stress and all of it. And so one day I slept in and didn't go to school, and I didn't go back.
Yeah. That was intense. And I was out of town. You just sent me a text and you just said, I'm done.
Did I?
Yeah, I was in Atlanta.
Oh.
And I was like, can we talk about this when we get home? And you just texted back, we can talk. Well, you might, I don't know if you said yes or no, but you were like, it's done. I'm done.
Yeah, I've always been very sure about my decisions with school, about online school, and I was sure about going to Running Start, and then I was sure about not doing any more of that kind of schooling because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, that I'm going to beauty school, but that's something that I am excited for, and I know that I will continue to be excited for when I'm in it, because I'll be learning. Everything that I'll be learning is basically training for the job that I'm going to have. Yeah, and it's always kind of felt a little pointless, school, and I took very random college classes. Yeah.
So you had this job that was sending you over the edge, which you couldn't really articulate that to us.
No.
You never really spoke into it. And you weren't eating.
Mm-mm.
And that was starting to become a thing, a kind of pretty scary thing, right? Will you talk about that? How your anxiety played into your ability to feed yourself?
Yeah, it was... I can't really think about I have no recollection of how it started or how it became anxiety not letting me eat, but it became a thing where I just wasn't hungry, or I just was too anxious to eat, or I knew that I was just too nervous. I was eating, but it wasn't, as much as a normal person would eat.
Yeah. And even talking about it would fill you with anxiety. And you were in clear distress.
Yeah.
As you were making the decision to leave school, you were in some heavy distress and you were hurting and you needed more help than I knew how to give you. I was really struggling about knowing what to do. Like the summer before with online school, that was stressful. But then you saying, I'm done with this. I'm opting out. Yes, high school, that experience wasn't working for you, but also knowing this layer of mental health was also a huge barrier in getting in your way. I was just like, what, because I'm speaking into this because the community, there was somebody that asked, like, how did you sit with that? Because some people, it's like, well, you can't let the anxiety win. Like, you can't let the mental health win. And what about...
It was debilitating.
Yeah, it was debilitating. And I just want everyone to understand, like, this wasn't it wasn't like, okay, you do you, Rowan.
I had to convince you.
Yeah.
It was Dad got it faster than you did. Not saying it's a bad thing, but okay. I decided, and then once I decided, I was like, I'm doing this and absolutely nobody can change my mind. And Dad stuck with me, and I kind of told you, times are changing and lots of jobs accept a GED person, not a graduate, but GED certificate. And to me, I was like, it's not as big of a deal as you think. Because to me, it was just what I had to do. It was what was the best thing for me.
Yeah. How did it make you feel that it was, feeling my worry and my distress over it?
Well, I felt annoyed sometimes because I knew that... I know your generation of parents think that a GED is less than a high school diploma, and I just didn't see it that way. I just never saw it that way. I just, I felt like I was graduating early. I didn't feel like I was dropping out or like I was missing something, because I didn't want to be there. There was nothing for me to miss.
Yeah. Which is an interesting statement and to remember, because what you also knew about me, because I would talk about all the time, is that high school
was the time of your life.
Right. Not the peak, everyone, but college. It was a good time. Yeah, college too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were good times in my life.
And you were also very different from me.
Yeah, we have very different temperaments. How would you describe me?
I would describe you as a cartoon sunshine, walking around high school, giving thumbs ups and hey, everybody, I'm here. Doing all the things. Accurate. Yes, I know. That's how I see you going to school. And then there was me, with my head down, not wanting to be there, not wanting to participate in anything the school did. We're just very different. And I knew that high school was a great time for you. And I also knew that it just would never be a great time for me, so I just wanted to get it done with.
Yeah.
And get the conversation, I wanted to move on.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did end up opting out. We had to go to the local high school
which was a nightmare.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
God, we had to meet with the principal.
Who didn't know our family.
Yeah, she didn't know me at all. It was the first time she's ever seen me, and we had to go there so I could officially drop out so I could start doing GED stuff. And we met with her. She's like this older lady, and I was like, oh, great.
So she's a great principal. Maybe,
but she was just saying everything under the moon except for me dropping out. She was like, you could do this, or like, have you even thought this through, or whatever. I was like, this lady, and I don't do good with talking to authority. I would probably tear up, and I probably almost did, but my mom totally backed me up, and she was like, no, like, this is what she wants to do.
Yeah,
this is what we're doing.
New.
Yeah.
We just need the signature.
Yeah, like, shut up, lady. Give me your signature.
Well, and I remember feeling like I could feel your experience. I could feel you just like under attack. And I also recognize that a high school principal is going to want to do everything they can to keep a kid in school. And of course, but she didn't know who we were.
And it wasn't a bad thing. And people talk about it like it's a bad thing, dropping out of school or getting your GED. But it wasn't. It was like the light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't like, oh man, I couldn't do high school. Like, oh man. It was like, yes, a different option. I get to be done.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, something that the adults believe and something that happens over time that you can't really articulate until you're having your own realization about it is, you can't always see the big picture until you're down the road a little further to know. And I know for me, it's going to be my hope every step of the way that you are like, that was the best decision. That was the best decision. And, I think all the parents hope like, oh gosh, I don't want to get to a place where my kid's like, you could have pushed harder, or you could have, that's a real thing.
I mean, from my perspective, if I like seeing into my future, and you've asked me this, like, what if in the future you regret it or something? And to me, like, what would I have regretted? Like, what would I have wanted to do that I didn't? I didn't want to be in high school. I'm not going to have grown up and be such a different person that I'm like, oh yeah, I should have really done high school. Like,
I would have been a great class president.
Yeah, like, come on. That is not me. No way. And I mean, like, talking, like, why would I regret it, honestly, is what I have always been thinking.
Well, and something that's reassuring to me, too, is as you get older and get clearer and make the turns and the pivots that we all do, it's not like there's a time in our life where we no longer can do what we need to do to create the life that we want. You know, I mean, I've had many a pivot in my life, and I think that, for my Generation X, but especially for, the Generation X's parents, it was, you go to school and you get a job, and that's your job for 40 years until you retire and blah, blah, blah. And then for those of us Gen Xers, a lot of us do a lot of pivoting. And I think for your generation, Rowan, it's I think you kids are all across the board, and you're going to make the life that you want. And you've always been, at one point it was like, wow, there's this stubborn streak around Rowan, but it's not stubborn. It's really you just being clear. And as you heal through your mental health journey and you continue to make choices for yourself, there's always been this through line for you of clarity that I'm learning over time that I can trust for you. Anyway, side note. You did end up, so you opted out last fall. You had a few months that were pretty bleak.
After I dropped out, I pretty much took like 5 months. I'd say it was 5 months.
I would too. It was a lot.
You wanted it to be
killed me.
Yeah, where I did nothing, and I was just kind of surviving and walking around
Sleeping
half alive. Yeah,
I'd make you eat as much as I could.
Yeah, she would watch me eat. There was a point where she would make my meals, sit me down, and watch me eat. We had fights over food, but I couldn't I dropped out of school not to immediately study more and work on some tests. Motivated. Yeah, like I needed time to heal a little bit. And so like 5 months after I ended up opting out, that's when I started to really look my GED test in the eyes and be like, okay, you fucker, I'm gonna get you done.
Yeah, and you started working on your tests. You passed 2 before COVID.
Without studying for either of them.
Right, that was one of the parents was like, what was the studying like?
Non-existent.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in the GED.
Well, let me say what I say.
Yeah.
I have a friend who I've been friends with since I was in like 2nd grade who took her GED test way before I did, and I saw her one day like while I was getting ready for my test, and I could just ask her all the questions about it because she took all of them and passed all of them, and she was like, oh, it was a breeze, like, but I asked her about the test and everything, and she was like, oh my God, she knew how my brain worked, and she was like, I didn't study at all, I just took them all, and it was just so like generalized questions, and you'll be fine. And I was like, okay. So I didn't study for the language arts one because I love writer. Language arts. And the math one, I didn't study for either, and I'm glad I took it before COVID because I have no idea if I could take it. I could not take it right now and pass.
Why?
Because math.
Because
math is hard.
Oh, okay, so just getting it over with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after COVID, when the testing centers opened up, my mom bought flashcards, a lot of them.
I love flashcards.
Bulky stack, yeah. She pushed them on me a lot. But we had like family study nights where she would, we would study like, the science ones. And then for my social studies test, I just we paid for practice tests and I just took them, and I felt confident after taking the practice test because the website told me you pass the practice test, you pass the test. So I went in and took it and I passed it and I had my GED.
Yeah. So we had a deal that I would pay for the first round of tests, but if she didn't pass, she'd have to pay for any makeup tests that she needed to do. And because I was sitting in judgment, I was sitting in the fact that I wasn't seeing you study and what does this mean and how are you going to do? And like, I'm judgy.
You thought I was, you're like, oh, she dropped out of school. She's not smart anymore. All those years of school were nothing.
And you proved me wrong. So you completed all the tests. Will you share about what your plans are now?
Yes, I'm going to esthetician school in April, which is it's like skincare school. I'll graduate school in October, and I'll be a licensed skincare specialist. I'll be able to work in like a spa or a salon or something and do facials or waxing or stuff like that. Eyelashes. You're excited about that.
I am. I just gotta try that. Just gotta try that eyelash situation. Yeah,
I'm really excited.
You're excited.
Yeah.
You're excited.
Yeah, it's a career school. It's not like, oh, you're gonna take like this writing class you won't ever use it. It's like every day that I'm going, I'm learning something that I'm gonna specialize in.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about the potential of some anxiety showing up as you move into a new learning environment?
I mean, it definitely will because I'll be working with people. People!
You're not very... My sister has a funny shirt that says it's too people-y out there.
I agree. I know that I'm going to get anxious, but also that I know how to work through it now, which is crazy to me that I can say that. But I know that I could work through it, and it's just not as big of a deal as it used to be.
Do you feel like there's going to be a moment where you're going to recognize the payoff of working through it and staying in it and sticking with it is going to outweigh the it will be hard?
Yeah, I think that I'm not going to want to give up. I mean, it's only 6 months. It's a 6-month program. And afterwards, like, I don't have to go straight into getting a job.
Because you work for me.
Yeah, I do. But I could, and I could, I could go anywhere, and I could take some time. And if school was so damaging to my mental health, which I don't think it will be, then I could take a break. But I think I'll be fine.
I think you'll be fine too. I think it'll be a nice, small learning environment. And like you said, really pointed content.
And it'll be a good opportunity to be around people.
Oh my gosh, the facial expression I'm getting right now is so good. Oh man, Rowan, thank you so much. I love you.
Love you too.
I'm so grateful that you would come and not only open up to me, because you all need to know that Rowan and I do not sit around and we've had this conversation one other time, because we
already recorded this.
Yeah, this is actually the second time we recorded it because something went terribly wrong. But yeah, she's gifting not only all of you and the community, but also me, this glimpse into her experience. And I'm grateful. And because I ask all of my parents this, or all of my guests this when they come on, what is joyful courage in the context of you being you? What does joyful courage mean to you?
I think joyful courage is having the courage to find joy even when joy isn't presented to you or isn't right in front of you. It's having the courage to make a choice to be joyful. Yeah.
I love that, Rowan.
Thanks. Has anybody ever said that?
I don't know. Maybe something close to it. I love you.
Love you.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.